15 million years ago, the waters of South America belonged to a monster. Purussaurus was a 15-meter, 12-ton caiman armed with a terrifying biological weapon, a bite force of 69,000 newtons. We know exactly how it used that power. Paleontologists have uncovered the fossilized shells of ancient, car-sized turtles bearing enormous, crushing puncture marks that perfectly match the teeth of Purussaurus. Nothing else in the water stood a chance. But an animal of this size creates a biological paradox. This energy pyramid illustrates the strict rules of ecological thermodynamics. To place a massive 12-ton apex predator at the top, you need an astronomically large base of prey and plant biomass beneath it. If we shrink the space to match the aquatic output of the modern Amazon, the entire system collapses. Today's jungle rivers simply do not produce enough aquatic biomass to keep a population of 12-ton crocodilians alive. The top tier starves and drops off. So, how did the Earth generate enough energy to build a 69,000 Newton bite? The answer requires reverse engineering a lost world that existed long before the modern jungle, the immense aquatic system known as the Pebas Megawetland. The first layer of our reconstructed food chain requires an abundance of massive prey. The waters of Pebas were filled with targets like Stupendemys, a freshwater turtle weighing over a ton, and Pebas, an ancient river dolphin 35% larger than any alive today. On land, the terrestrial herbivores were equally staggering. The massive scale and thick bone density seen in these fossils indicate an animal built to sustain over 700 kilograms of weight. An organism of this size suggests an environment capable of producing immense amounts of vegetation year-round. The fuel for this endless buffet came from the sky. During a period called the Middle Miocene climatic optimum, global average temperatures hovered roughly 3 to 4 degrees Celsius higher than they are today. That continuous, stable warmth triggered an explosive year-round expansion of massive palm forests and swamp vegetation. The dense, waterlogged ecosystem functioned as a limitless biological fuel source, allowing populations of giant herbivores to rapidly multiply. Yet, while an endless supply of plants created a hyper-abundant bottom tier for the food web, warm weather alone couldn't generate the sheer volume of deep, standing water required to hold all these giants. To build this environment, the Earth had to physically trap the water. The construction of this massive aquatic trap started thousands of kilometers to the west, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, where the Nazca tectonic plate was relentlessly plunging underneath the South American continent. Over millions of years, the friction and violence of that collision forced the crust of the Earth upward. It forged an imposing continental wall stretching over 7,000 kilometers long, the Andes Mountains. This topological map demonstrates the mechanical consequence of that rising rock. Notice how these ancient river systems initially flowed westward. As the Andes rose, they acted as a colossal dam, blocking the natural outlets. The trapped waterways had nowhere to go, swelling backward and pooling into a 1 million square kilometer inland basin. As rain and wind eroded the mountains, they flushed millions of tons of mineral-rich sediment into the trapped water. This particulate matter acted as an explosive geological fertilizer. This massive, stagnant basin, supercharged by mountain nutrients and a hyper-warm climate, formed a closed-loop biological engine. Millions of tons of organic material were produced, consumed, and recycled, concentrating enough sheer energy to push all the way up the food chain and power the crushing jaws of Purussaurus. But the exact tectonic forces that built the Pebas Megawetland eventually guaranteed its destruction. The geological boundaries holding the water in place were not static, because the Andes Mountains never stopped rising. As the immense weight and pressure of the mountain range continued to grow, the continental crust began to buckle. Slowly, the slope of the entire South American continent shifted, aggressively tilting the terrain toward the east. The sprawling, stagnant lakes of Pebas breached their muddy thresholds. The trapped water rapidly organized into a high-flow, transcontinental drainage system, carving a continuous path across the landscape until it poured straight into the Atlantic Ocean. The sudden loss of deep, stagnant water pulled the rug out from under the prehistoric food chain. The vast aquatic plants and mollusks vanished, The giant herbivores starved, and without thousands of tons of meat to fuel its massive body, Purussaurus went extinct. The Pebas Megawetland didn't die because the continent ran out of water. It died because the water began to move. The biological engine that sustained the massive apex predators required total, permanent stagnation to function. When the deep lakes finally drained, they didn't leave behind a barren wasteland. Instead, they exposed a vast basin coated in millions of years' worth of ultra-fertile, mineral-rich mountain sediment. Flowering plants and trees immediately exploited this newly stabilized soil. They exploded upward, layering their canopies to form multi-story biological cities, so dense and expansive that the millions of transpiring leaves actually generated their own rainfall. The modern Amazon emerged from the ruins of the Pebas system. The total collapse of that ancient aquatic world provided the exact prerequisite needed to lay the foundation for the forest we see today.